The village of Umuada had transformed over the years, with Amaka's river flowing at its heart. Everyone in the village, young, old, and travelers from distant lands, knew the story of Amaka, the spirit queen. Her legacy was whispered around firesides, shared in song, and retold during village celebrations. Neka, the village's young leader, would often gather the community at the riverbank to remind them of Amaka's sacrifice. One day, Neka began, her voice soft yet powerful. Amaka stood right here, facing our ancestors and declaring justice for every life taken unjustly. Neka's words hung in the air, and the villagers leaned in, captivated by her tale. Children huddled closer, their eyes wide with wonder, while the elderly nodded, as though reliving that day themselves. Do you remember the courage it took for Amaka to stand up to darkness? Neka asked, her voice clear as her gaze swept across the gathered villagers. The courage it took to make sure that peace remained in Umuada. A murmur rippled through the crowd as they whispered, "Yes, we remember." The weight of her words sank into them, a reminder that the river's power was not merely a myth, but a gift that demanded respect. From somewhere in the crowd, a young voice called out, "Will Amaka protect us forever?" A chuckle rippled through the villagers, and Neka smiled, nodding reassuringly. "As long as we honor her memory and protect her river, she will always be with us," Neka replied. She instructed everyone to place offerings, fresh fruits, flowers, and small handmade charms, along the riverbank in respect. Each item held a prayer, a wish, or a quiet message for Amaka. One elder knelt, placing a string of hand-woven beads at the water's edge, her voice quivering as she whispered a blessing for her family. The river flowed peacefully, as if acknowledging the crowd's presence. Soft ripples formed along the water's surface, and some villagers claimed to see faint reflections, faces of women dressed in white, spirits from long ago. As dusk settled over the crowd, a calmness spread, and they lingered by the water, speaking in hushed voices, reliving their connection to Amaka's legacy. To the villagers of Umuada, Amaka's river was more than water. It was a lifeline, a symbol of justice, and a reminder of the spirit that had saved them. Everyone knew that her legacy lived on, flowing as surely as the river itself. They made a silent promise: they would protect the river with their lives, ensuring it remained a place of reverence and peace for all. Over time, tales of Amaka's river began to spread beyond Umuada, whispered by travelers and neighboring villages. It was said that the river's waters could heal even the gravest ailments, and it wasn't long before visitors arrived in search of its blessings. They came quietly at first, moving in small groups and carrying their sick and frail, their eyes filled with hope. The villagers observed the newcomers with caution. Among them, a young boy pointed at an elderly woman being helped to the riverbank by her family. "Will the river help her?" he asked, his voice tinged with wonder. "It depends," Neka replied, watching the visitors closely. "The river responds to those who come with pure intentions and open hearts. But those who come with greed," she let her words trail off, drawing the children closer. "The river remembers. It knows when someone's intentions are selfish." The elderly woman approached the river, her trembling hands reaching toward the water. She murmured words of gratitude, dipping her hands into the river and gently placing the water on her face. Her family knelt beside her, their heads bowed, whispering their own prayers. The villagers watched, holding their breath, and as the woman rose, a spark of vitality appeared in her eyes. Her hands, which had trembled just moments before, now seemed steady. The woman's family gasped, embracing her with cries of joy. Villagers clapped and cheered, breaking into a song that spoke of blessings and healing. The melody echoed along the riverbank, filled with praise for the power of Amaka's river. But not all who came to Amaka's river were blessed. A few days after the elderly woman's healing, a wealthy merchant arrived, his attire gleaming with gold, flanked by guards carrying crates. He scanned the riverbank with a calculating gaze, whispering to his guards, "We'll take as much as we can. This water is worth a fortune." The villagers exchanged wary glances, murmuring to one another as the merchant knelt by the river. His name was Oliza, and he was known far and wide for his ruthless business dealings. Kneeling at the edge of the water, he retrieved a silver flask and dipped it into the river, hoping to capture the river's essence for profit. But as he did, a chilling breeze swept over the area, and the soft sound of whispers filled the air. The whisper seemed to come from all around, echoing as ghostly faces formed on the river's surface, women with sorrowful eyes and stern expressions. Oliza froze, his flask slipping from his hands as he stumbled back. His guards backed away, and the villagers watched in silence, a mix of awe and fear on there. As the fame of Amaka's river spread, more visitors arrived, each bringing with them hopes, ailments, and stories. Some came for physical healing, others for spiritual renewal, and some simply to glimpse the river that held such mystical power. Over time, the paths leading to Umuada became more traveled, and the village began to change. The villagers watched as strangers entered their community, buying goods from local merchants and exchanging tales of Amaka's blessings. Farmers began to see bountiful harvests, and artisans sold woven baskets, hand-carved charms, and beaded jewelry to the visitors who wished to take a piece of Umuada's spirit home with them. In a short time, the modest village began to grow, swelling with new energy and prosperity. One evening, Neka gathered with the village elders by the fire, observing the bustling village square filled with laughter, stories, and music. Amaka's river has brought blessings beyond healing, Neka said, her gaze thoughtful. The prosperity of Umuada grows with every step taken by those who visit our sacred river. The elders nodded in agreement, some smiling as they shared stories of visitors whose lives had been changed by the river's waters. One elder, Okoye, spoke up, his voice steady and wise. But with this prosperity, we must be cautious. The river gives freely, yet it also remembers those who take without respect. We must not allow greed to turn the gifts of Amaka into a curse. Neka looked into the fire, her expression serious. She understood the gravity of Okoye's words. We will protect the river, she vowed. Its spirit lives in every villager. And as long as we honor Amaka, our blessings will continue. As the village grew, so did whispers of fear. The river, though a source of life and prosperity, also had a presence that was undeniable. Children shared stories of figures seen by the water's edge at night, shimmering reflections that vanished when they looked directly at them. Elders spoke of a cold wind that occasionally swept over the water, carrying with it an unsettling feeling. One night, as the moon cast its pale glow over the river, a young boy named Chidi dared his friends to visit the riverbank after dark. "Are you scared?" he teased, his voice barely a whisper. "They say if you go there at night, you'll see the spirits." The other children laughed nervously, glancing toward the distant river. One of them shook his head. "My mother says Amaka's spirit doesn't harm the good-hearted. Only the greedy get punished." Encouraged, the children inched closer to the river, giggling and whispering. But as they neared the water, a chilling breeze swept over them. Shadows flickered on the surface, forming shapes that seemed almost human. The children froze, their laughter fading as the shadows grew clearer. Women in white, their faces solemn, watching over the river. Without another word, the children turned and ran back to the village, their hearts pounding. That night, they each swore to honor the river and to never approach it with disrespect. The stories of Amaka's guardianship spread, a gentle reminder that the river was both a blessing and a protector. With each passing year, Neka organized a gathering to honor Amaka's legacy. She called it the Day of Remembrance, a time for the villagers to pay homage to the river and the spirit that watched over them. Villagers gathered by the river at dawn, bringing offerings of flowers, fruits, and handcrafted charms, which they placed along the riverbank. On one particular day of remembrance, the villagers sang old songs, their voices echoing through the trees and over the water. They danced and clapped, celebrating the peace and prosperity the river had brought to Umuada. Neka stood at the river's edge, her voice leading the village in a prayer of gratitude. Amaka, spirit queen of justice, she began, her voice rising above the soft murmurs, we honor you today and every day. May your protection never leave us, and may your justice remain with all who come to this river with pure hearts. The villagers repeated her words, their voices uniting in reverence. A soft breeze rustled through the trees, and some claimed they felt a presence among them, a gentle warmth that filled the air with peace. As the ceremony continued, the villagers shared stories of those who had been healed, recounting miracles and blessings attributed to Amaka's spirit. In the crowd, an elderly woman whispered to a child, "Do you see the way the river glows under the morning light? That is Amaka smiling upon us." The child looked at the water, her eyes wide, and nodded solemnly. The day of remembrance ended with laughter, food, and dancing, as the villagers celebrated not just Amaka, but the unity and protection that her spirit had brought to Umuada. They returned to their homes that evening, hearts full, reassured that as long as they remembered Amaka, her blessings would remain with them. As the years went on, word of Amaka's river continued to spread beyond Umuada's borders. Travelers from far-off lands began to arrive, seeking the river's renowned healing powers. Some brought gifts, offering fruits, textiles, and crafted items in thanks, hoping to receive blessings in return. Others, however, arrived without reverence, only to leave disappointed, with no response from the river. One evening, a woman from a distant village approached, her movements slow and uncertain. Her skin was pale, her breath shallow. Supported by her son, she moved toward the river, her eyes clouded with pain. Neka, watching from nearby, saw the sincerity in their steps and went to greet them. "Welcome to Umuada," Neka said softly, guiding them closer to the river's edge. The young man nodded, explaining, "My mother has been ill for months. We've come from very far. They told us of the river's blessings." Neka gave a small nod, gesturing for the woman to sit by the water. As the woman knelt, she cupped the water in her hands, bringing it to her lips, her whispered words of gratitude filling the air. The crowd watched in silence, holding their breath. And slowly, the woman's color began to return, her breath steadier, her eyes regaining their clarity. Gasps of awe filled the air, followed by joyful cheers and chants praising the river's power. Neka spoke to the villagers, her voice calm but filled with emotion. The river's blessings flow for those who come with an open heart. Amaka's spirit remains strong, guarding and guiding us. That night, the woman and her son joined the villagers around the fire, sharing stories of gratitude and celebrating the gift they had received. For those present, the evening was yet another testament to the river's power and the spirit of Amaka that remained. As time passed, however, not all visitors came to Amaka's river with the same pure intentions. Rumors had spread of the river's ability to heal and rejuvenate, and some saw it as a resource to be claimed and used. One day, a wealthy trader named Chika arrived, his pockets heavy with coins and his mind filled with schemes. He saw the river not as a place of reverence, but as a way to profit. Chika approached the river with an entourage of men carrying empty jars, their plan clear, to gather the water and sell it far from Umuada. Ignoring the murmurs of the villagers and the silent disapproval in their eyes, Chika knelt by the water's edge, grinning as he dipped his first jar into the river. But as soon as he touched the water, a piercing cold spread through his hands, and he stumbled back, eyes wide with shock. The men around him paused, watching in confusion as Chika's face twisted with fear. A soft whisper filled the air, growing louder until it was clear enough for all to hear. "Greed will be punished." Chika's expression shifted from arrogance to terror as the whispers surrounded him. He dropped his jar, stumbling to his feet and motioning for his men to leave. The villagers watched as he fled, his once confident steps now unsteady. From that day forward, stories of the river's judgment spread like wildfire, warning that Amaka's river would only bless those who approached with humility. With each passing season, Umuada continued to flourish. The steady influx of visitors brought trade, and the village grew into a small but bustling town. Merchants from neighboring villages set up stalls in the market, selling handmade crafts, woven cloth, and carved charms, each item touched by the spirit of Umuada's legacy. Villagers who had once lived simple lives now found themselves thriving. Farmers saw their harvests double, with crops growing healthier and more abundant each year.